and welcome to all the truth seekers that have joined us today from around the world. I'm glad that you've decided to join this online community. For the next hour, GMDC will help you uncover new ideas that will push your thinking inside and outside of your business. My name is Mark McKelsey, and I lead the people and the projects that bring you insights, shopper trends, and next practices from Global Market Development Center. This Infocast, as usual, will make your lunch hour profitable by demonstrating just how the curiosity and the power of the consumer must be at the center of your strategy. In other words, the way you've done things in the past is not the way your future success will happen. Retailers and brands, more than ever, must be adaptive and in constant flux in order to connect with evolving populations. So how you respond to this session is important. Without further ado, let's jump into it. I'm coming to you live from Colorado Springs and have Boon-Long from Edge by Ascential joining us from Boston today. Today's Infocast will help you understand where the health and beauty industry is going. We will show you best-in-class examples and also help you know what to watch out for in regards to its future state. There's no doubt that all non-food categories sold at retail, health and wellness and beauty products are the most energized based on the self-care movement that we see taking place. For more information on that, we want you to visit www.selfcaresummit.org and learn more about the event that we have coming up in Indianapolis in less than 3 weeks. So, universally, self-care is a heightened personal objective for individuals aspiring to feel better and live longer. That may sound like a mouthful, but self-care is a sustainable cultural trend as people assume responsibility for their own outcomes because they're taking control of their personal health care and looking more and more to fill that personal objective in stores that are close to them and visit them more frequently with a self-care mindset. How do we know this? Well, it's because due to the fact that healthcare costs are growing exponentially. Self-care means that makes more sense as consumers are feeling the pressure to keep their spending under control. That means health, beauty, and wellness can and will play a major role in the future of retail. And some of you may ask why. Well, first of all, self-care needs are very complex. Naturally and organically derived products and solutions help consumers feel better about what they put on and inside their bodies while treating chronic or acute conditions. Not to mention, OTCs have fewer potential side effects than prescription drugs and are easier on the wallet sometimes. While most of these products can be found on a website, e-com certainly cannot match the experience that a well-designed self-care environment can that contains a unique selection and insights on the most popular remedies. In a recent GMDC report, we discovered that 9 in 10 consumers desire for retailers to assume a more prominent and responsible role for assisting them with personal wellness and beautification right inside the store. And that makes sense because we see these categories driving new expectations and store traffic within the categories which already have high household penetration and are truly a part of a daily regimen. So with that said, Maud, would you help our viewers know a little bit more about what they can expect to learn today?
Absolutely. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Boon-Long, and I'm an analyst here at Edge by Ascential. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. During the webinar today, we'll be looking at the latest development in the health and beauty category. So we'll look at an overview of the global market, look at who the top players are and where the top channels and who's growing the most, as well as looking at trends that are relevant to the categories. We'll also explore some best-in-class case studies of retailers and brands who are innovating the category as well, before wrapping up with some takeaways and conclusions.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. Before we get started and dive in, just a few logistics about the Infocast before we get going. I'd like to remind you that we can take questions during or after the session, but we won't get back to them until after the session. The way to ask your questions is please use the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen, not the chat area. That's not where we take questions, but please use the Q&A feature and we'll get back to those by the end of the hour. So with that said, let's get started. Back over to you, Maud.
Thank you, Mark. And let me share my screen so we can get started. And thank you everyone again for joining me this afternoon. Before we get into the sector overview and review the data of who's growing, where are we growing for the health and beauty sector, I wanted to make sure that everyone's aligned on what we'll be covering for health and beauty today. So for Edge by Ascential, the Here at Edge by Ascential, we define the health and beauty category as covering health, beauty, as well as personal care. So within health, this includes over-the-counter medication, as well as prescription drugs. For beauty, this is your cosmetics, both color cosmetics and foundation and skincare, as well as fragrances. And then for personal care, we're going to also look at more skincare products, as well as oral care, hair care, and grooming. As we go through the case studies here today, we're going to explore them in the lens of our 4 winning strategies that we've defined at Edge by Ascential. And this includes the store of the future, e-commerce and digital ecosystem management, supply chain and fulfillment, and shopper engagement and retention. Now, I'll explain what these pillars mean a little later on, but first I wanted to take you guys through an overview of the health and beauty category. When we look at these 2 categories as a whole, we're seeing consumer spending continue to grow over the next 5 years for health and beauty in all regions. This chart shows consumer spending for health and beauty in 2018 and 2023. The dark green bar shows the consumer spending in 2018, and the light green bar shows the consumer spending in 2023. All the data you're seeing here and the data you'll see throughout the rest of this presentation comes from the Edge by Ascential Retail Market Monitor. When we're looking at consumer spending for the category, as you can see, North America is currently the largest region for health and beauty spending, and will continue to be the leading region in 2023 as well, reaching $608 billion in 2023. When we look at this in terms of sales added, Asia Pacific is actually going to add the most sales out of all the 5 regions here, adding nearly $200 billion in sales for consumer spending. And on top of that, Asia Pacific is a region where we're seeing a lot of beauty trends start. So things like Korean beauty or Japanese beauty, these are trends that we have seen in the past 2 years come into stores in both North America and in Europe. So that's definitely a place to keep an eye on for emerging new beauty trends. But for the rest of the presentation today, we'll be focusing more on initiatives and case studies that are coming from North America. Now, consumer spending growth has been shaped by a few broader trends in society. And when we're exploring external trends that are impacting retail, we here at Edge by Ascential use a framework called STEEP to examine the changes that we're going to see. And this STEEP framework looks at drivers in society, technology, economy, industry, and policy to explain some of these new retail trends that we're seeing. Today, for health and beauty, we're going to mainly focus on society and technology. And the first driver that we're seeing that's going to be a really long-term driver in these categories is the aging population. And as most of you guys know, in developed countries, especially here also in the US, we have an aging population and people are having fewer children than they were in the past. And so as the population skews older, we're going to see an increased spending on healthcare products, especially like Mark said, there's this idea of self-care. People are becoming more proactive about getting preventative care, not only when they're old, but at an earlier age to keep taking care of themselves and staying healthy. In terms of beauty, we're also seeing this with anti-aging products. We're seeing more consumers spend money on that and being willing to pay a premium for high quality, effective products that target their needs. The second driver here is the demand for experiences. And consumers have really shifted their spending from just buying products to spending more on experiences. And that's going to dictate how retailers will lay out their stores and allocate the space in their stores going forward. The last driver I wanted to talk about is digital advancement. And this driver is really going to fundamentally change the way people are shopping today with new tools like chatbots and virtual try-on tools that are making it easier for consumers to get closer to the product and make more confident decisions buying these products online or even in store without a store associate helping them. Digital advancement will also have a high impact on healthcare with new tools like connected products, voice and telemedicine, giving consumers more control of their health, and that way they can be more preventative and proactive about their health care, moving away from that treatment-based type of healthcare that we've seen in the past. And when it comes to technical advancements in healthcare, we're really seeing a spectrum of innovation here. So on the preventative side, this is where consumers have more control, and they can look at their health metrics like their heart rate or their blood pressure through things like wearable fitness monitors or self-service health kiosks in grocery stores and hyperstores here in the US as well as in Europe. They can also leverage AI-based chats or recommendations on what are the right vitamins and supplements they should be taking based on their lifestyle or where they live and what their health goals are. On the reactive side, we're also seeing retailers invest more in these telehealth tools to enable on-demand care and access to care for consumers. So whether that's in-store kiosks like the one you see above, or out-of-store telehealth options like the one you see below through mobile apps or desktop sites, consumers now have more access to healthcare than ever before. And all of these tools are helping them make more health decisions for themselves, which is accelerating the shift of health and beauty spending from offline to online. This chart shows the share of US online sales for various categories, as well as their growth rate or their CAGR from 2018 to 2023. As you can see here, for the beauty and personal care category, as well as the OTC and vitamin category, the share is still relatively low for online share compared to other early mover categories like books or consumer electronics. However, we are seeing a very high growth rate for both of these categories, with 16% and 17% CAGRs respectively. And this is because consumers are being more equipped with tools to make confident decisions buying online. They're more comfortable picking beauty products online or buying vitamins and over-the-counter medicines online with some of the new tools available. So when we look at e-commerce in the context of other channels, we can see that it is by far one of the fastest growing channels here for US health and beauty sales. This chart shows 2018 and 2023 US health and beauty sales broken up by channels, as well as the 2018 to 2023 CAGRs in the arrows. E-commerce is growing at 13.8%. It's going to nearly double its sales and it will become the second largest channel for health and beauty sales by 2023, surpassing both supermarkets and hyperstores. But even though e-commerce is growing fast, the majority of sales will still remain in stores. And this will especially move through the pharma and health channel. And this channel includes both, your typical drugstores like Walgreens and CVS, but also specialists like GNC. Consumers are still going to drugstores and pharmacies for the majority of their health spending. And there's also such a massive gap between pharma and health and the other channels because our numbers do include prescription drugs as well. But even without that, pharma and health will still lead as the #1 channel for health and beauty sales. Other channels I wanted to highlight here are the beauty specialist channel, discount channel, and the club channel. These are all rising store-based channels that we're seeing growing faster and outpacing the growth rates of traditional big box stores like supermarket and hyperstores. The beauty specialists, those are the Sephora and the Ultas of the world, and most consumers nowadays, that type of place is their #1 choice or their preferred place to buy beauty products. And with discount and club stores, they're getting a lot more value for their money at these places. And so we're seeing these types of specialists or discount and club stores gaining a lot more growth over the next few years. When we take a look at this landscape on a retailer level, we're seeing that it's quite a concentrated landscape, with Walgreens and CVS accounting for over 52% of US health and beauty sales in 2023. So we're seeing a lot of consolidation in the space. For example, with Walgreens acquiring a majority of Rite Aid store network. And so here, there's a lot of competition. And even with Walgreens and CVS accounting for over half of sales for health and beauty, they're still struggling to maintain front-end comps because of all the competition in the health and beauty world. We have retailers like Amazon and Walmart tapping into healthcare, and healthcare is really becoming the core battleground here within retail, and it's a new way for retailers to gain a new revenue stream and get closer to the consumer and better connect with them. So we're seeing more retailers push innovation and new services in order to better compete in the health and beauty world. And they're not just competing amongst themselves anymore. Over the past decade, we've seen a rise of many digitally native and direct-to-consumer brands that are disrupting the traditional retail landscape. We have brands that are getting more popular now, like Honest Company and PillPack, as well as more emerging brands that came out in the past few years, like Care of and Hims. We even have traditional retailers breaking into the D2C landscape, like P&G, who's launching their DS3 liquid-free household and personal care brand. All these new direct-to-consumer brands are becoming huge challengers for traditional mass brands because they're so agile and they can better adapt to consumer priorities. They have personalization capabilities, really great customer service, and a lot of different value propositions that help them stand out against traditional mass brands. All of these new emerging players are forcing traditional business models to redevelop their offering and innovate what they can give to consumers. So for traditional retailers, they need to turn to strategic partnerships now to expand their offering and enhance their capabilities compared to what they had historically. Amazon, as most of you may know, they've had a lot of different initiatives in the healthcare space over the past few years. They've partnered with JP Morgan and Berkshire Hathaway to form their healthcare company called Haven. But even more important for the retail landscape is their acquisition of PillPack in order to enable online delivery of prescriptions. And we'll talk a little more about that later on when we explore some of the case studies. Walgreens has also made some partnerships in the past year or so, the first one being Kroger. And this is really about driving growth and driving traffic to their stores with adding more fresh offering into their stores, as well as having pickup locations for Kroger orders in their stores. This gives shoppers another reason to come into Walgreens and shop at Walgreens with a wider assortment and more service offerings. Their partnership with Microsoft is also helping them create more digital health offering, like a digital health corners in their stores and using AI for personalized care. The CVS and Aetna acquisition or merger, I'm sure that's top of mind for a lot of our audience here today as well. And that's really transformed some of the offerings that CVS has nowadays with their new Health Hub store concept, which is enabled by the Aetna merger with expanded services and more personalized care offering and wider access to care in general. Lastly, for Rite Aid, they've been struggling in the past few years, especially after divesting a lot of their stores. And so they've partnered up with Adobe to develop real-time customer profiles in order to use that on top of AI machine learning that Adobe offers to create, again, a more personalized experience. As you can see, a lot of these major retailers are turning towards strategic partnerships to innovate their offering and drive long-term growth. Other ways outside of partnerships that we're seeing retailers drive growth is through new initiatives in 4 different areas. And these are the areas that we define as our 4 winning strategies here at Edge by Ascential. The first one is the store of the future. And this is really all about making stores more experiential and service focused and curating the assortment to make it a simplified shopping experience for consumers. The second initiative or winning strategy is e-commerce and digital ecosystem management. And in this part, it's really about e-commerce platform gaining a larger share of the health and beauty category by expanding what they offer online and expanding their ecosystem. Our third winning strategy is supply chain and fulfillment. And this is top of mind across all categories, creating fulfillment options that are fast and flexible for consumers, as well as ensuring that their supply chain and fulfillment is sustainable. Lastly, shopper engagement and retention. Within the health and beauty space, this is all about driving personalization, using data and getting closer to the end consumer to better engage with them and retain your shoppers. So when we look at the store of the future, one of the key trends that we're seeing within the health and beauty space is health and beauty retailers are significantly rethinking their assortment and how they're allocating their space. We're seeing more retailers now than ever before rationalizing some of their unprofitable categories and SKUs to make room for more services or more experiential categories. They also want to simplify the shopping experience and declutter the store in order and use curation to make it a more enjoyable experience for consumers. The first example we have here of Sephora, they launched a couple years ago a new format called Sephora Studio. And this is a small format store of about 2,000 square foot. These stores are about half the size of the average Sephora store. So it's significantly smaller and they're carrying a lot less assortment than they do in their usual stores to make room for some of the service offerings that they usually have in their stores as well. On the health side, we're seeing Walgreens trialing a reduced assortment store concept across 17 different stores in Florida. And these stores have about 20% less assortment than the average Walgreens store. So in both of these cases, we're seeing a huge shift in assortment as retailers rethink the way they're allocating space for their SKUs, not only in the number of SKUs, but the type of SKUs that they're carrying in the store. They're using curation more than ever before as new brands emerge and fight for space on the shelf. Retailers are also dedicating more space towards products that align with current trends, whether that's Korean beauty or natural personal care products, or even CBD products more recently this year, that's really been emerging and taking up more of the shelf space. Another big investment we're seeing in stores is services. And this is where retailers are really filling some of that vacated space and using services to draw in more foot traffic and differentiate from the online experience. And CVS is a great example of that. They've really doubled down their investment on services in the past year. First of all, with their Health Hub store, which they're expanding to 50 more stores. And in that store concept, they're dedicating 20% of the store space towards services. They're also expanding their Smile Shop partnership with Smile Direct Club to 1,000 locations over the next few years. And these Smile Shops offer 3D scanning services to make invisible braces for consumers. And it's really allowed CVS to attract new shoppers to their stores. CVS reported that 32% of Smile Shop consumers that come to the CVS locations are not regular customers and are millennials, which is a demographic that CVS has been trying to target and acquire. So these services are really effective in not just gaining foot traffic, but gaining new customers for the retailer. And health services aren't just unique to drugstores. We're seeing supermarkets also adding more health services in their stores, like Albertsons with their AI-enabled clinics, or ShopRite and Hy-Vee adding more dietitian services and clinics in their stores. On the beauty side, services has always been a crucial part of their offering. Obviously, we have traditional players like Sephora and Ulta, where most of their stores now have some kind of makeover area or hair salon to offer services for customers. But we're also seeing newer players do the same thing. So in this example, the makeup brand MAC and the hair care brand Bumble and Bumble partnered to create a half service, half retail store concept where consumers can go in and buy their products, but also get their hair done or get a makeover at the same time. And half of the store space here is used for services. So both in the health and beauty category here, we're seeing a high emphasis on services by retailers to add value to the shopper, to the shopping experience for consumers. Now, retailers aren't just adding services in stores. They're also doing it online. They're expanding their ecosystem, especially to add more healthcare offerings to attract more consumers to their website. Walgreens has, in the past year, launched a lot of different online programs, including telemedicine programs where you can talk to your doctor, your dermatologist, even your therapist online through their website, through these various partnerships with MD Live or dermatologists on call. And this really extends care and makes it more accessible to more consumers. Walgreens even offers these care options for people without insurance to widen that access even more. CVS is doing a similar thing where you can get telehealth services both through desktops and through mobile apps. So care is now being digitized even more than ever before, and that's making it more accessible to the end consumer. So far, we've talked a lot about examples coming from traditional health and beauty players, but new, less traditional players are also tapping into the healthcare space. As we talked about before, healthcare is really the core battleground we're seeing right now, with retailers like Walmart and Amazon really trying to tap into that healthcare space. And Amazon is a prime example of that. First, they came out with a partnership with JP Morgan and Berkshire Hathaway that we talked about, but more impactful for retail is this acquisition of PillPack, which delivers online prescription orders to the consumer's home. So not only are they giving consumers the convenience of home delivery, but the way PillPack packages their medicine, they sort it by time and date to encourage better medical adherence as well. And besides the prescription that they offer, they also deliver OTC products, medical tools, first aid kits, simple stuff like that that you may want to order and get within the same day or the next day. Through this acquisition, Amazon has really built their expertise and credibility in the healthcare space. So since then, they've launched their basic care private label OTC line, and they're even developing an Alexa-enabled wearable product where consumers can potentially monitor health metrics or fitness goals through the wearable product. As you can see through all these new innovations, the competitive set for the health and beauty category continues to expand. And these newer players will especially focus on the digital space or the online space, as that's where it's less developed than the store network. It's easier for newer players to break into that space where there's not as much activity yet as there were before. So that's why we're seeing Amazon going through the PillPack acquisition, or some of the new digitally native or direct-to-consumer brands really focusing on those online platforms. But no matter what type of retailer you are, whether you're a traditional or less traditional or a direct-to-consumer brand, to enable all this e-commerce success, you need to ensure that you have a strong logistics and supply chain network to to be able to handle that volume and all that online orders for consumers. Consumers are expecting immediacy, and they're thinking of next day delivery as the norm now, especially with retailers like Amazon and Walmart having next day delivery as their standard option. And so fulfillment is now the key battleground for retailers across all categories in order to win over shoppers. And CVS is investing a lot in that as well. And they announced earlier this year that they're expanding their same-day prescription delivery to a nationwide level. This is going to be an area we're seeing a lot of development and a lot of investment across all categories, whether they're doing the delivery themselves or they're partnering with intermediaries like DeliveRx, which Walgreens did, in order to enable that same-day delivery speed. Now, with delivery making online ordering of medicine or beauty products so convenient, health and beauty players, especially the drugstores, they need to rethink the role of their stores and what their stores could be. And they should really leverage their massive store network to become replenishment hubs for some of these new refillable products that we're seeing in the space. We've seen a trend in the past year of refillable or reusable products really gain prominence, especially as consumers are prioritizing this idea of sustainability, which brings me to this next example of Beauty Kitchen. This is actually an example from the UK, and this brand Beauty Kitchen has installed refillable stations in Boots drugstores in the UK, where consumers can come buy the product one time with the packaging and then come back and refill it, whether it's your face wash or your shampoo and conditioner. This not only reduces waste, but it also is cheaper for the brand to distribute these products because you're now just distributing empty bottles, which weigh a lot less than bottles that are filled with the liquid every time you're bringing new assortment or new inventory to the retailer. And while this example is from the UK, it's definitely something that we can see move into the US as well. We're already seeing things like fill your own olive oil or fill your own kombucha bottle. And so something like this moving into personal care seems like the natural next step. And the sustainability and sustainable packaging, that's not only a cost-effective way for brands to save on some of that back-end expenses, but it's also a way for them to align with consumer values. As I just talked about, consumers are prioritizing sustainability, natural products, and transparency. So valuing sustainability in your business model will help the brand or retailer better connect with consumers as well. And that brings us to our last winning strategy, which is customer engagement and retention. This is all about better connecting with your consumers and better engaging with them so that you're retaining them and making them come back for future purchases at your store or buying your products again in the future. Within the health and beauty space, to really effectively engage with consumers, you need to interact with them across all different touch points and provide personalization. In today's retail landscape, there's so many new touch points and points of influences, whether it's social media or connected products, or even all these new pop-up events we're seeing, especially for the health and beauty space. And brands now need to manage all of those to make sure you're communicating, engaging consistently with consumers. In the health space here, we've seen CVS and Aetna partner with Apple to create an Apple Watch app. And this app allows for personalized health and fitness goals. It enables activity tracking, even rewards for healthy actions for consumers. They also provide reminders for annual physicals or when consumers need to get flu shots. So all these different features are helping CVS and Aetna become a larger part of consumers' lives and their healthcare beyond the retail platform. Not only that, but it's also a new source of data for CVS and Aetna to learn more about their consumers. And all this data is going to be crucial for personalization. Personalization here is really going to be one of the most, if not the most impactful engagement strategy, especially in health and beauty. Consumers are expecting personalization more than ever before, and they're even giving up more information than they did in the past in order to get that personalization back. And it's not just personalization in communication and in the content they're seeing, but it's really the personalization of the product itself that they're getting. And Sephora really does a great job with this, both online and in-store. And this example I wanted to highlight is their in-store digital tool called their Color IQ tool, which allows store associates to shade match consumers' skin color to a color, a foundation or a makeup color that is perfectly fitted to their skin type. And this way, consumers can get a personalized product that really fits their need. And it also allows for more personalization in other areas where, the Color IQ tool can determine what type of complementary products you can buy, giving even more personalization opportunities for the retailer and the consumer. Personalization here is going to be the key future differentiator for engagement and retention strategies, especially for the health and beauty space. So I definitely expect to see more development and investment in this area. So we've talked a lot about different case studies, highlighting some of the different best-in-class examples here of both brands and retailers in the health and beauty space. So I wanted to wrap up the webinar with a few key takeaways and implications. The first key takeaway is just that health and beauty is going to continue to grow in the US. And consumer spending is going to grow for this category by $128 billion over the next 5 years, with online penetration reaching 23%. So we're going to see that continued offline to online shift for both health and beauty. And this consumer spending growth for the health and beauty category is outpacing growth in overall grocery spending, or as well as household and pet care spending and edible grocery spending. So health and beauty is going to be a category that's top of mind for both retailers and consumers. And while we've talked a lot about how health and beauty is going to shift online and that shift is going to accelerate, the majority of sales will still continue to move through the store. We're going to see a lot of that still being concentrated in the pharmacy, the pharma and health channel, but also discounters, beauty specialists, and club channels will grow particularly fast as well. On top of all those traditional retailers and channels, it's also definitely important to monitor these emerging players like digitally native and D2C brands who will continue to transform the landscape. The second takeaway is that shoppers are demanding more experiences and convenience than ever before. So this is leading retailers to concentrate their initiatives and investment in expanding the service offering and their personalization capabilities, as well as strengthening their logistics and fulfillment capabilities as well. And lastly, consumers will prioritize sustainability and natural ingredients, especially in their health and beauty products. Like Mark said before, they care more and more about what goes on their body and what goes in their body, and they're willing to pay a premium for those products that align with their values and are transparent and have important ingredients to them. So what does this all mean for both retailers and suppliers? The number one implication is that retailers and brands need to expand their touch points with consumers in order to increase those opportunities for experiences and engagement. So this not only includes, social media platforms and connected devices like wearables and voice devices, but also in-person events. Because at the end of the day, your store staff is still going to be one of your best engagement factors and assets. Just think about a Sephora store. For those of you who've been to a Sephora store, when you walk in, their beauty advisors are amazing at educating you about your beauty needs and your concerns and answering your questions. So in-store staff is still going to be one of your best brand and retailer ambassador. The second implication is around that idea of data. As consumers are demanding more personalization, retailers and brands really need to build up that data capability and be able to turn the data that they're getting from all these new touch points and turn that into actionable strategy. So retailers and brands either need to build that talent in-house or form strategic partnerships that will enable them to action out some of these insights from the data that they gather. And lastly, when we look at the store experience, retailers really need to simplify that in-store experience. Consumers are being overwhelmed with all the new choices and the new brands that are emerging. When you're standing in the health and beauty aisles, there's so many products out there to choose from, and consumers want convenience. And convenience doesn't just mean fast shipping and free delivery. It also means being able to navigate all the choice in stores in a quick way, in an efficient way. And so retailers need to really use curation and simplify the assortment they have in store in order to help consumers make that choice and also drive growth at the shelf. And with that, I wanted to thank you all for joining me today, and thank you for your time, and I'll open it up to any questions that may have come through.
Thanks, Maud. We really appreciate your partnership in this area, as well as working alongside our Education Leadership Council. We do have a few questions, so let's go ahead and get to those now. Maud, Angela is asking, what will the role of labor change around these categories?
Yeah, so for health and beauty, since there's such an experiential category, there needs to be a significant upskilling in the labor that you're seeing in store. So as we talked about earlier, and the implications, how the store associates at Sephora are there to provide education and services. This is a common theme that we'll see for the health and beauty category across all retailers. The store associates need to be less focused on transactional tasks and be more skilled at the service provision aspect and being able to educate consumers as brand ambassadors. I actually saw CVS post a job posting for telephonic nurses for their telemedicine services. So retailers are really ramping up staff and labor in these service areas. And I think that's where the role of labor is going to shift in the future for these categories.
Great. Tara is asking, will private label be a threat for mass health and beauty brands? And how can these brands protect themselves from private label?
Yeah, that's a great question. And definitely, I think private label is a threat across all categories, but especially in health and beauty, we're seeing more retailers launching new brands. So Amazon, for example, again, with their basic care line, but also new skincare brand that they came out with. We're seeing even retailers like Trader Joe's come out with beauty brands. So there's definitely a lot more competition there. But I think with health and beauty, there's definitely a level of consumer trust that needs to be built in order to get that customer acquisition. So I think for traditional brands, they really need to lean into that and focus on their brand story and focus on that consumer trust that they already have, as well as maybe even going the premium route. A lot of private labels, they're focused on going for the lower price points. So for some of these brands, communicate your effectiveness or what's unique about your brand, whether that's, you're clinically proven or you have natural ingredients in it or you have shades for very specific skin types. And so focus on those unique aspects and use that to justify, some of your premium price points or justify just standing out against some of these private label products.
We've had it while you're answering that, we had another question come through. It sounds very similar to what you just answered from Tara. But Monica is saying, I'm seeing more and more private label next to a name brand that it's being compared to. What is this doing to the name brand? So just wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on what you just answered for Tara.
Yeah, so just to build on what I just said, I think, with retailers trying to protect their margins, private label is going to be a greater competition in this category. They're going to make the packaging look like mass brand packaging, and they're going to communicate that their products are just as good as your other brands. So it's even more important to communicate that value proposition of what your brand can offer in order to stand out against some of these private label brands, especially as consumers are becoming a little less brand loyal or tied to a specific brand. They're more open to trying more options, especially if it saves them money. So that's going to be even more crucial that you communicate that, again, that value proposition that your brand has to offer.
That's great. Maud, we don't have any other questions today, so I think we'll give, everyone had this hour booked, but I think we can give 10 minutes back to the group. So thanks again for today's session. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you all.
If this is your first time experiencing a GMDC Infocast, I'd like to make sure that you're aware that this session and all previous Infocast events can be viewed in the archive tab on gmdcconnect.org, along with a schedule to register for future events. I'd also encourage you to get involved with GMDC in retail tomorrow and become a member. Today's Infocast is a small sample of what members have access to. And please remember, GMDC is a nonprofit retail-owned association that helps you connect to people and companies for growth and opportunities within the general merchandise, health, beauty, wellness, and self-care industries. For more information, please contact me at markm@gmdc.org. And also come back to our website here. This session is being recorded and will be available in a week or so if you'd like to share it amongst others within your organization. Thanks for joining us today. We hope the rest of your week is as productive as this hour has been. Take care.